Hey, welcome back to another video. This time we're talking some news, because just yesterday, as I record this anyway, by the time I upload it, it'll probably be 2 days ago, we got the official, proper, for real reveal of the next Sentai, Kikai Sentai Zenkaiger. This has had a good bit of buzz surrounding it, I think, since we got the trademark a little while back, and I really wanted to take some time to talk about it, because there's a lot, I think, to not necessarily to go through, but definitely to unpack and to sort of infer from what we got, and I really want to talk about it because there's a lot that I'm super excited for. Before we get started, though, I do want to give quick thanks to Tokusatsu Network and Special Form 12, whose article and Twitter thread, respectively, I'm getting a lot of my info from. I do speak a little Japanese, but not really enough to be able to just read the press releases exactly and translate from those, so I sort of rely on sources like these to get the translated stuff. So it seems only fair to give them the credit that they deserve, and so the links to both Toku Network's article and Special Form's Twitter thread are going to be in the description if you want to read through them and go through some of the stuff that I'm not going to talk about, because even though there's not a whole lot here, there's stuff that I'm just not going to touch on. I'm going to talk about what personally interests me the most from it, and sort of gloss over other stuff. So go give those a read to get everything that I'm not going to be mentioning here. So the first thing that immediately stuck out to me that both caught my interest and got me a little worried, probably isn't the right word, but a little cautious potentially for what it might lead to, is the fact that the villains are attempting to destroy parallel universes. And that has me wondering, since this is an anniversary season, if they're going to be sort of doing the Zeo or Decade route, where the previous Sentai are all going to be parallel universes to Zenkaiger, if Zenkaiger is going to be existing in its own completely separate thing away from all the other Sentai, or if it's going to be like a thing where all the Sentai exist in this same timeline, but the Zenkaigers do sort of like an Exiles sort of thing, where they go to different dimensions to just sort of stop them being destroyed or stop things going wrong, I guess. And if it is the latter, that can go one of two ways, really. I'm always in for doing different takes of established things, but that can go either really well or really poorly. You can take characters that people really enjoy and give a new twist on them to make them interesting, or you can completely change them and you kind of wonder why it's even the same the same characters in the first place, and it can be hard to care about them. The latter happened with Kamen Rider Decade, which is important to note, but we'll get to that in a little bit, as well as Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, two shows that I think are notable for handling returning characters from previous series very poorly, in my opinion. But if they do it really well, then I am really excited to see the potential like different takes on previous Sentai. Like if you wanted to get like super meta, something like the Gokaigers, maybe they're not pirates, maybe maybe the Gokaigers are the bad guys in one particular universe, or something like that. Or maybe even something that I would really like to see would be like a total switching of eras, more or less, like taking an old Sentai and sort of transporting it into a more modern incarnation. I realize this would be like super expensive, and this is probably not going to happen, but it is a thing that I'd like to think about. Like, say if they took, 5-man and did a what if it aired in 2008 kind of thing. How would the show change like that? Or even taking a modern Sentai like Go Busters and doing what if it had aired in, 75. It's almost certainly not what they're going to do, but it's, I'm tossing ideas around, just what I would like to see and what I think would be really interesting. And even if they're just really minor changes, ultimately, I think it would still be very interesting to see, so long as they do it really well and still make you, care about the characters. And that is assuming that they have returning actors at all. I imagine they would, because it's an anniversary season, and ones that are specifically like devoted to the anniversary, like Gokaiger, they are focused very much on bringing back old elements. But even without returning actors, this one still has returning elements, as all of the main Zenkaigers are based on something from Sentai's history. The main character, our leader, Zenkaiser himself, is pretty obviously based on, I feel like Showa Sentai leaders in general, but very especially Aka Ranger and Big One with his color scheme, as well as more recently Aka Red, who was sort of a conglomerate of all Sentai Reds in one, and sort of represented the Super Sentai series in general, as well as the other individual members who are all, interestingly, robots, and are based on old Sentai mecha. We've got Zenkai Juran, who's based on Daijujin from Zyuranger, Zenkai Gaion, based on Gao King from Gao Ranger, Zenkai Majin, based on Maji King, and then Zenkai Burun, who's based on Daiboken from Gogo Sentai Bokenger. It's a very eclectic group, I think, of Sentai mechs. A couple of them are from anniversary seasons, but really most of them are not. Gao Ranger and Bokenger were both anniversary seasons, but they weren't really, they weren't Gokaiger type anniversary seasons. They were more milestones, I guess. And the others seemed picked sort of at complete random or based on just preference. So it leads to a lot of possibilities as to who the sixth is going to be, because there's always a sixth. Plus, as many people have pointed out, all of the other members correspond to a color on Zenkaiser's design, but there is one that is not represented, that being green, and green is historically sort of the beginning of the extra ranger trend, with X1 Mask in 5-man, or Mask Man rather. My brain works very, very good. His name is X1 Mask, so obviously he is definitely not from Mask Man. And then later, more famously, Dragon Ranger from Zyuranger, both sort of the templates for the 6th Ranger that we have now. But because there doesn't really seem to be a clear pattern as to which mechs they picked for the team, I feel like that leaves a lot of possibilities open as to who or what mech the 6 would be based on. If they're even based on a mech, they could be another human, like presumably Zenkaiser is. There's a lot of ways, like I said, they could go with who could be the extra ranger. Ones that I'd want to see are mostly from Sentai that I really like. I'd like, maybe if they are based on another mech, maybe Geki Toja or Victory Robo, or maybe even like something from a more modern Sentai, like maybe Gokai Galleon, or if you wanted to get really, really weird, Tokuo. I would like mention ones that I think they would logically go with next, but like I said, they seem to be picking the mechs at complete random, so it's really hard to tell exactly what direction they would go. And even if there was a pattern, Toei is strange, and they would still probably pick one that's totally bonkers. Ultimately, when it comes to how the team is structured and the premise behind it, I think it has a lot of potential to be very creative with old Sentai, or even just be a whole bunch of nostalgia to bring back old actors, or even just old teams and see old elements. And in the case of the main Rangers, old mecha. And then moving sort of away from the show itself, I guess, and into the production side of things, I do like looking at the crew of a show, and I just want to talk about a couple of the really notable members of the team. The series composition is handled by Komura Junko, who is a kind of divisive figure. I think generally she's well liked, but you get a lot of differing opinions on a lot of the shows that she's worked on. But one of Komura's strengths is very character-focused plots. While they are slow, you get more invested in the characters, and that's what keeps it, likable. That's what keeps it interesting, and what makes you want to keep going. You're not really there for the plot, you're there for the interesting characters, and it is a thing that she does very, very well. Zyuohger is a probably perfect example of that, where the plot is extremely bare bones, and you kind of forget that it even has one sometimes, but the characters are all so good and entertaining that you don't really care. Komura Junko is a solid writer, especially for a show like this, because she handled many of the tribute episodes of Gokaiger. So she's experienced in something like this, and from Gokaiger, she did a very good job on a lot of those, so I think the series is in good hands, at the very least, when it comes to its anniversary aspects. How it handles, its own overall plot can be up in the air, because she also did Lupin Ranger vs. Pato Ranger, a show that I don't really like, but generally she has a good track record, so I think it's a good sign to have her on board for a show like this. The show's director, Nakazawa Shojiro, has also had a pretty good run in Sentai, but he's sort of been all over the place, so it can be hard to know exactly the kind of show you're going to be getting, because he's worked on Geki Ranger, a show that is very, very good, as well as on Ninja, a show that is very, very bad. So him being on directing duties doesn't really paint a clear picture of the kind of the quality that we're going to be getting, but generally he's pretty good. So I don't think there's anything to be too worried about. And then the action director, Fukuzawa Hirofumi, there's, as far as I'm concerned, really nothing to be worried about with him at the helm, because he's been action director for Sentai basically since Go Busters, and even before then he was a suit actor forever. So he knows what he's doing, and especially in the last handful of years, he's done some very, very cool, very good things with Sentai's choreography. As much as I don't like it, Lupin vs. Pato had some amazing fights, especially really, really early on. And with most of the team being robots in these normal, these very bulky suits compared to normal, I think it'll present a very interesting sort of challenge as to how to handle Sentai's normally very energetic, fast, dynamic fight scenes. These are kind of more bulky on the level of Kamen Rider costumes, so it'll be quite the show, I think, to see how Sentai's more stylistic fighting is given to suits that are bigger like this. But if anybody can do it well, it is probably Fukuzawa. And then bringing back the Kamen Rider Decade comparison that I brought up a little while ago, one of the producers on the series is Shinichiro Shirakura, who is more known as a producer for Phase 1 Heisei Rider, as well as in Phase 2 Kamen Rider Zio. So he's done both of Rider's big anniversary, going through the history kind of shows, and now he's bringing his touch to this one. Because he's normally a Kamen Rider producer and a Phase 1 Kamen Rider producer at that, I think it'll be bring a very unique sort of touch to it, because generally a lot of Shirakura's ideas are left to the writer to figure out, but you can still just sort of tell when he's been involved. Like Zio and Decade have a lot of very similar feeling things, and that's not just because Decade was in it. And while he has worked on Sentai in the past, it's only in a very limited capacity for most of the time. He hasn't worked on very many shows, and the ones that he put the most work into were in the 90s. So it might bring a very odd, strange twist to things. And I feel like really ultimately with everything, Zenkaiger is going to end up being a very weird, strange Sentai. We have 4 robots, a guy who's a mixture of mostly just old Showa Sentai members, parallel universes. Zenkaiger is on track, I think, to be strange, but honestly, I'm okay with that. Most of the vibes that I'm getting from this are good. Whether it will end up being good is sort of up in the air, but just based on what they've revealed to us and what we've seen, I think it'll be good. I'm very excited. I'm getting, like I said, way more Gokaiger vibes than anything else, and if it's even half as good as that, Zenkaiger was going to be probably pretty good, I feel. So, yeah, that's all I really have to say about Zenkaiger. Let me know what you think of the series. Do you think it looks good? Do you think it looks terrible? Do you not care? Let me know in the comments down below. That's all for now, and I will see you guys next time.